On a planet we think we've crossed from end to end, peered into every corner with satellites and drones, there are still places where you are not allowed to set foot. Not recommended, not dangerous but possible, simply forbidden, under penalty of law, under threat of death, under the protection of entire military cordons. These are islands surrounded by water and by prohibition at the same time. On some, the very ground beneath your feet will kill you. On others, it's what lives there. On a third, they won't let you in to protect not you, but them. And there is an island closed off so as not to ruin an experiment that nature itself is running. Today we'll travel through islands where no human is allowed to enter, and figure out why. And with each one, the reason for the ban will be more unexpected. We'll start with the one where the ban protects not the visitor, but those who live there. In the Bay of Bengal, among the tropical islands, lies a patch of land called North Sentinel. At a glance, it's a postcard paradise. Dense forest, white beaches, coral reefs, but it may be the most closed-off place on the planet. On this island lives a people who deliberately want nothing to do with the outside world, the Sentinelese, one of the last communities on Earth that has had almost no contact with modern civilization. They are estimated to number only a few dozen or a few hundred, and by various accounts they have lived on this island for tens of thousands of years, entirely on their own. And they make it perfectly clear that guests are not welcome. Any boat, any helicopter, any stranger who approaches the shore is met with warnings and hostility. The Indian government has officially banned anyone from coming closer than a few kilometers, and here's what matters to understand. This ban protects first and foremost the Sentinelese themselves. The thing is, they have lived in isolation for thousands of years and have no immunity to diseases that are ordinary to us. A simple cold, the flu, measles, things we shrug off, could wipe out the entire people because their bodies have never encountered them. So the literal rule here is this: stay away, not only for your own safety, but for their survival. In recent years, there have been a few cases where people secretly landed on the island despite the ban, and it ended tragically. North Sentinel is not a tourist restriction. It is a border between two worlds that must not be crossed in either direction. From an island that protects its inhabitants, we move to an island whose inhabitants are themselves the reason for the ban. About 30 kilometers off the coast of Brazil lies a small island with the official name Queimada Grande, but the whole world knows it by another name, Snake Island, and it has earned that name honestly. The thing is, about 11,000 years ago, when the ocean rose after the Ice Age and cut this patch of land off from the mainland, snakes were trapped on it. Deprived of their former prey, generation after generation they adapted to a new life and turned into a separate species found nowhere else on the planet, the golden lancehead, one of the most venomous snakes in the world. And now the most astonishing part. Over thousands of years in isolation with no natural predators, they have multiplied to an incredible density. By some estimates, in places on the island there is literally one snake per square meter. Picture a small island where snakes are everywhere, in the grass, in the trees, under every rock. That is exactly why Brazil's authorities have, for nearly 100 years, forbidden anyone whatsoever from landing on the island. The only ones who occasionally get there are Navy sailors who service the automatic lighthouse, and a handful of scientists with special permits, and even then with medics on standby. This is a place where the land itself belongs not to people, but to one of the rarest species on the planet. But if those two islands are dangerous or closed because of living creatures, the next one is deadly because of what humans put there themselves. Somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, on Eniwetok Atoll, lies the small islet of Runit, and on it stands what the locals have nicknamed the Tomb. It is a giant concrete dome, the size of an entire stadium, sealing a crater in the ground tight with a lid. To understand what's beneath it, you have to go back to the middle of the 20th century. Then, over roughly 12 years, dozens of nuclear tests were conducted on this and neighboring atolls. Atomic bombs were detonated here, some of them thousands of times more powerful than the ones used at the end of World War II. What remained was land contaminated with radiation, and the question arose of what to do with it. The solution was simple and, as is now clear, alarming. From across the atoll, they gathered more than 100,000 tons of radioactive soil and debris, hauled it all into one crater left by an explosion, and poured a thick concrete dome on top. Inside, among other things, are deadly radioactive substances, including plutonium, which will remain poisonous for tens of thousands of years. And here is the modern trouble. The dome was built as a temporary solution. It is aging, cracks have appeared in the concrete, and the ocean level around it is rising. Scientists increasingly warn that this tomb may begin to leak, releasing radiation into the Pacific. This is a place you cannot enter, because humans once hid there something they couldn't handle, and now the sealed ground itself has become a threat that is slowly waking up. And now an island that is off limits for the exact opposite reason. Not because it is dangerous to us, but because we are dangerous to it. In 1963, off the coast of Iceland, a rare event occurred. Straight up from under the water, as a result of a powerful underwater eruption, an entirely new island rose to the surface. The molten lava cooled and hardened, and over a few years, a fresh, untouched patch of land was born, one that simply hadn't existed before. They named it Surtsey, and scientists immediately understood that they had been handed something priceless, a blank slate, a unique chance to watch, live, from the very first second, how empty, dead land is gradually colonized by life, how wind and birds bring the first seeds, how the first plants appear, the first insects, how from bare rock an entire ecosystem is slowly born. It is a living laboratory of evolution and nature. And to keep this experiment honest, the island was closed to everyone almost immediately. No one is allowed to set foot on Surtsey except a handful of scientists, because a single person carrying a foreign seed on the sole of a shoe or dropping an apple core could forever spoil the purity of the observation. There is a known case where a plant suddenly sprouted on the island, and it turned out to have grown from a seed brought by a human. It had to be deliberately removed so as not to disrupt the experiment. Here, the ban guards neither people nor treasures, but untouchedness itself, the rarest chance to see how nature creates a world from scratch without our interference. The next island is closed for a reason that is hardest of all for a modern person to understand: the reason of sacred tradition. Off the coast of Japan lies the small island of Okinoshima, which for centuries has been considered sacred. On it stand ancient Shinto shrines, and the island itself holds around 80,000 historical offerings to the gods, accumulated over 1,500 years, a true treasury that is called a national treasure. But getting there is virtually impossible, and the rules surrounding the island are striking in their severity. For centuries, women were not allowed on the island, a ban tied to ancient religious notions of purity. But men did not have it easier. Only a handful of people could land there for a single day each year, and only after they had fully undressed and performed a cleansing ritual in the cold sea. Leaving the island, you could take nothing with you, not a single blade of grass, not a pebble. And what a person saw on the island, he was forbidden to tell anyone. And a few years ago, when the island was added to the World Heritage List, and there was a threat of an influx of the curious, the shrine's keepers decided to close it almost entirely, and now only the priests themselves remain there. This is a ban born not of venom and not of radiation, but of a belief thousands of years old, a place that people protect from themselves out of pure reverence. And the next island is closed for a reason directly opposite to a sacred secret, for the reason of a military secret. In the middle of the Indian Ocean, in the Chagos archipelago, lies the atoll of Diego Garcia, one of the most strategically important and most classified places on the planet. Today, it is a major joint military base, and for the ordinary person, the island is completely closed. There are no commercial flights, no permitted ships, and just to set foot on this land, you need a special authorization that is granted to almost no one. The nearest large landmass is 1,000 miles away, and this place has a heavy backstory. Just a few decades ago, to clear the island for the base, its entire native population, which had lived there for generations, was removed. The people were resettled far away, and for decades they have been fighting for the right to return. So Diego Garcia turned from an inhabited island into a closed military fortress in the middle of the ocean, about whose inner life the outside world knows almost nothing. This is a forbidden island born not of nature and not of faith, but of geopolitics and secrecy, a place that exists on maps, but that for everyone else might as well not exist. And here is yet another island that combines two reasons for the ban at once. It is both poisoned by humans and has become a refuge for wildlife. Just a few dozen kilometers from San Francisco, one of the largest cities in the United States, lie the rocky Farallon Islands. They have sinister old nicknames, the Islands of the Dead and the Devil's Teeth, and not without reason. The thing is, for several decades of the 20th century, the waters around these islands were used as a dump for radioactive waste. According to official data, about 48,000 barrels of radioactive trash were dropped to the seabed here. Many of these barrels rusted through and opened over time, and a significant portion of them could never be found on the bottom afterward. The place itself became deadly inhospitable to humans. And yet, here's the astonishing twist. Above the water, these islands turned into one of the richest wildlife reserves on the entire coast. Here are enormous colonies of seabirds and rookeries of marine animals. As a result, today the islands are closed to ordinary people for two reasons at once, both because of the toxic legacy on the seabed and to preserve this seething life up above. Only biologists have access. The Farallons are the perfect portrait of our contradiction, a place we first poisoned and then, by walling it off from ourselves, unintentionally turned into a paradise for everyone but us. But there are forbidden islands that frighten not with radiation and not with weapons, but with their grim history. Near Venice, in the waters of the famous lagoon, lies the small island of Poveglia, and its past is so heavy that it is called one of the most sinister places in Europe. For centuries, this island served as a quarantine. People were brought here during the terrible plague epidemics to wall the disease off from the great city. The island became a place tied to countless dark pages of history. Later, already in the 20th century, a psychiatric hospital operated on it for a time, which added an even darker reputation to the place. Today, Poveglia is abandoned, its buildings are crumbling, and the Italian authorities keep the island closed to free visits. The official reasons are prosaic: decrepit, dangerous ruins that require protection and restoration. But in popular memory, this island remains a place people try not to approach, forbidden not only by law, but by feeling. Not every ban is born of radiation or poison. Sometimes it is created by the sheer weight of human history. And the last island on our list proves that sometimes the most dangerous thing is left behind not by nature, but by a laboratory. Off the coast of Scotland lies the small island of Grunard, which for decades was completely closed to people, and the reason was truly terrifying. During World War II, the military conducted biological weapons tests on this island, specifically experiments with the anthrax pathogen, a deadly disease. The spores of this bacterium proved incredibly resilient. They soaked into the island's soil and retained their lethality for decades. As a result, the island was declared unfit for life and sealed shut. An entire patch of land, poisoned by a single military experiment, turned into a zone you could not set foot on under penalty of death. Only many decades later, closer to the end of the 20th century, was a massive decontamination carried out. The ground was doused with special solutions to kill the spores, and the island was finally declared clean. But even today, it continues to be monitored, and its very story serves as a sinister reminder. What a human releases into the world in a laboratory can outlive even the war it was created for. And when you look at all these islands together, something common emerges. We're used to thinking we've conquered the planet, that there's no place a human can't reach. But these patches of land, scattered across the oceans, quietly prove the opposite. Sometimes the law forbids entry, sometimes poison or radiation, sometimes a people who simply want to be left in peace, sometimes a belief thousands of years old, and sometimes the very fragility of untouched nature, which we are capable of destroying with a single touch. These are islands that set a limit to our curiosity and our self-assurance. And perhaps, in a world where almost no mysteries or blank spots remain, The very existence of places where we are not allowed is not a cause for frustration, but a reminder not everything on this planet was made for us. Some doors are better left closed.